Hi, I'm Randal Clark. I want to talk to you today about developing your oral cavity to help produce better tone quality, and also how that relates to doing some inflections and things in your solos to make you have more lyrical playing in your improvisation. Part of what I want to talk to you about is how the tongue operates. A lot of players play with a very set oral cavity, and what that does is doesn't allow you to compensate for some of the subtle pitch tendencies that all saxophones have. Something like this. You probably have heard people play like this before. Where you probably should be playing like. The only difference that I did there was I had my tongue set in a little bit of a different position so that it was flexible as I play. The tongue has to be flexible inside the mouth and the shape of the oral cavity to some degree. Now obviously you don't want to be moving it all over the place and things like that. That would be an indication of probably a bad setup or even a bad horn. But every saxophone has to have some minor compensation inside the oral cavity. So what I'm doing is I'm pretending like the pitch is this wide, and there's a top part of the pitch to play to and there's a bottom part of the pitch to play to. We should always aim to play for the bottom part of the pitch, and we can do that in two ways. We can either do that by relaxing the lower lip, which doesn't sound good at all, or we can do it by keeping the embouchure firm but letting the oral cavity in the tongue position direct the air to push the pitch down to that level. Without moving the mouthpiece of the embouchure, I can firm up and play at a very tight position. That doesn't sound good at all. It's cold, it's harsh. And so what I'm trying to do is relax the inside of the mouth and keep the tongue at that position so that I'm playing down at the bottom of the pitch. What that probably means I need to do is push in just a little bit. Most good players that I know, if you tune with a tuner and you have a very firm embouchure, that pitch will register somewhere on the tuner, but that isn't the way you're normally going to play. So what you want to do is tune where you're normally going to play. And I'm focusing down, so I'm going to match that on the tuner. And now what I can do is I can just push in a little bit to compensate for the flatness. I also want to show you something else. If I hold a pitch exactly in the middle of this structure, so this should still be a pretty good sound. Listen what happens as I slowly start to bend the pitch down. And I'm not talking a lot, 1 or 2 cents. I'm not pushing any more air. All I'm doing is letting things relax ever so slightly so the sound sort of opens up on the bottom. Now here's how the tongue plays in that. Let's say I'm doing a jazz solo and I want to do some scoops and I want to do some falls and things like that, which are some things that make a jazz solo really interesting. So I do something like. I'm using a key to help me there. Let me try to do it without a key. So I can kind of bend the pitch anywhere I want to by doing that. And you might think that's happening with the embouchure, but it's not. Listen to what happens if I try to bend that pitch with the embouchure. It has sort of a, for lack of a better word, it's kind of dopey. And the reason for that is when I relax the embouchure, I lose my ability to create a good tone quality. So what you want to do is adjust the tongue position in the mouth and keep the embouchure set. So here's an exercise that you can do that will help you keep that really, really big, open, round sound playing at the bottom of the pitch and help you get these inflections. What I want to do, I'll start playing a high D. Now I'm going to play a C sharp. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play that high D. I'm going to try to bend down to that C sharp. So I'm bending down using my oral cavity and my tongue position. The tongue, the back of the tongue is just raising up in the mouth ever so slightly. And that's creating, it's also kind of flattening out as it goes up. So, you know, when you raise the tongue, you don't want to choke the air off. So the tongue position raises, it flattens out a little bit. It forces the air to go up and over the tongue and hit the reed at a downward angle. When that happens, your pitch goes down. One test you can do to make sure you can do this are the front E and F fingerings. Those are the palm keys. And here's the front E and F. If you do not know how to shape your oral cavity, the E and the F will be very difficult to play, or you may not even be able to play them at all. So this is a good test to find out if you're able to manipulate the oral cavity. So now let's try and do it a whole step. D, down to C, and we can go further. So I know guys that can bend it a whole octave. Depending on your mouthpiece and your reed setup, you might be able to do that as well. With my setup, I can't. That's about as far as I can go. But that's about all you really need to do. And so now when I'm scooping and when I'm falling, I'm not using a lack of embouchure to create those. I'm using good tone with oral cavity support. That's all done with the oral cavity. And I don't know if you can see from the, where the camera's set up, but I want you to watch my lower lip, and you'll see that it's not adjusting. It's staying pretty firm. Instead of, so we don't want to do that. There's another way you can, another thing you can do as an exercise that'll help. And I have my students do this. Just play on the mouthpiece and try to play a simple song like Mary Had a Little Lamb. You know the song. If you can play Mary Had a Little Lamb like a kazoo on your mouthpiece, you are going to be able to move your tongue into the appropriate position to create that oral cavity support that you need for a good tone. Another thing you might try, which cannot be done unless you can do the oral cavity tongue position, is overtones. Those notes can only be played if you're able to adjust that oral cavity. So when it comes to tone production on the saxophone, or any instrument for that matter, air is the #1 thing, of course. We need to push air. But we also need to make sure that we have the oral cavity set up in such a way that we're able to get the biggest and roundest sound.